This is a supportive way to do shoulder stand. So, uh, the tendency for us whenever we go into shoulder stand is to sometimes flatten out the neck. And I'll demonstrate the way that we don't want to do it first. And that is coming into the pose on the neck and shoulders. So we tend to draw the chin into the chest and really cutting even the oxygen off in the front of the throat. And keeping that, we just drive all of the weight of the body into the neck. If for some reason you choose not to use the props that I'm inviting you to use, I would really encourage you to prop the upper arms underneath your body, creating this kind of bipod experience for you. And then add the third part, the tripod, to it by pulling the chin out of the chest, pressing down through the back of the head. And then another element, kind of bipod experience for you. And then add the third part, the tripod, to it by pulling the chin out of the chest, pressing down, is to really expand the toes and bring energy, muscle energy, into the legs. Whenever you bring muscle energy into the legs, it elevates the body, creating it a little more buoyant and decompressing the neck. So we want to look up beyond the toes. If you feel like that's too vertical for you, you can place your hands onto your hips and just allow your legs to be a little bit more over the face. And again, spread the toes, energize the legs. So you'll notice here in this position, I'm holding the hips. And therefore, I don't have all of that weight pushing down and into the shoulders. So these are the modifications you can do without the blankets that I'm going to show in just a moment. And this is what we don't want to do, where we drop the chin into the chest and make it a neck stand instead of a shoulder stand. You can even tell the difference in my voice between the two. To come out of the pose, you place your hands below the pelvis around the buttocks, and then begin a slow lowering where you're in control. And then we'll typically move into a counter pose. So we're going to bend the knees so that there's not a shock to the back. Let the back and spine decompress. And then extending the legs out, we're going to point the toes in this shape. So as we point the toes, it's going to increase the extension, the back bending of the upper chest. So if you'll notice, if I flatten my feet, it helps to push the back down into the floor. But if I point my toes, then it lifts the low back off the floor. And the same is true for the upper back. So we're going to drop the elbows down, grab the thighs, come onto the back of the head if you're working with a neck injury, or onto the crown of the head if you've got a nice strong neck already. Again, we're going to point the toes. This is going to bring the extension into the upper back where we're wanting it. We push down through the elbows. There's a very light touch of the head. I am not pushing hardly any weight whatsoever, maybe a half of a pound into my head. Point the toes, push down through the elbows, lift, and you'll typically stay in fish pose for half the amount of time that you stayed in shoulder stand. To come out, same thing, we're going to grab the thighs, we're going to lift the face, look down, and then lower. So the spine is long, and then take a pause. Now the modification for neck injuries or just wanting to always play it safe, and that's what I prefer. Playing it safe is, in my opinion, sustainable. So we want the soft edge of the blanket where our neck is going to be. So soft edge back, away from your hips. And then we want the span to be wider than your shoulders, okay? So this is the way I typically like to fold the blanket. And then we're going to come down about 3 inches from the rear edge of the blankets. So this way, whenever I roll back, my shoulders are still being supported, but my neck is no longer on the blankets. This is in order to keep the neck from going into that closed position at the chest. Now, in doing this, typically I would use a block up underneath my hips, but today, for the viewing purposes, I'm going to lift into a bridge, lift one leg and then the other leg. And I'm going to make my way partially to plow. You can always move into plow. From this position, readjust the arms. Now, if you've got a low back injury, this is not a good position for you to start from. Go ahead and go straight into shoulder stand and use the block modification underneath your hips. So here we have it, same thing. We can go completely vertical. Again, we have to pull the chin, tilt it up and away from the chest, or we can make the hands on the lower aspect of the pelvis modification. Okay, and here my neck is really free. Just a pointer is we never want to turn the head left to right. We do want to keep it, the gaze up, because the neck really doesn't want to take a bend with all this pressure near it. Even though you're not pushing on it, it doesn't want the pressure in the neck during rotation. Okay, so same thing. To come out, I'm going to lower my arms, take it slow and steady all the way down. Once my hips touch the floor or your block, lower the feet and release. Now this is a great place to have a modified fish pose. So while you're in this position, you can allow the blankets to do the work of the extension. And this is a couple of variations of shoulder stand. Namaste.